Turkish government is in similar position like Pakistani. Like this is the present Turkish government. This is a crazy Islamist in power who is misusing religion for his own private purposes, actually really to stuff his own pockets full of money and those of his friends. So there is kind of a natural alliance between the two. Correspondingly, Turkish president is interested in Turkish businesses receiving orders from Pakistani government and also obtaining the know-how about Pakistani combat experiences. This is a logical process, so to say. Now, the problem is the following. On one side, Pakistan is bankrupt, actually, since decades already. It's always kept alive by some sponsor from abroad. At earlier times, Saudi Arabia, then China, then Qatar, and now lately. So Pakistan actually on its own cannot afford really much. It is always dependable on what is, for example, Qatar currently ready to finance, what is Qatar ready to pay for, so Pakistan can acquire it. And the Chinese, they have their strategic alliance with Pakistan because Pakistan was highly influential in improving the production quality of specific Chinese weaponry over the time. For example, typical example is the Shenyang F-7 fighter jet, which was actually developed and made really capable of mass production thanks to Pakistani input. So the problem is now the following. All of this weaponry, US radars, Turkish command centers, Chinese fighter jets, Chinese missiles, indigenous rockets and missiles, all of this has to be integrated into one operational system, into one system which is where a single node can control all the operations so that they are better coordinated. However, it seems there are ever more indications, at least, that precisely this was a weak spot of the Pakistani armed forces. That their US radars were incompatible with the Chinese surface-to-air missiles. The Chinese surface-to-air missiles didn't know what the US radars were detecting. That the Air Force had a problem with coordinating some of the operations and so on and so on. So, great weapons, fantastic weapons, everything fine, great and fine. But the final trouble is, firstly, the integration, and secondly, how well are people operating that equipment trained? And when you are considering that Pakistani armed forces are armed forces of a country which is so heavily indoctrinated by its own military superiority, even if this is largely baseless, then it is kind of natural that there are negative repercussions for this, and that the armed forces are simply not professional enough. They're not scrutinizing their own combat experiences. They're not listening to people who have combat experiences, or they're ignoring what they should have learned. And then a defeat of this scope is de facto unavoidable. Therefore, by all, perhaps HQ-9 and HQ-16 surface-to-air missiles are much better than they performed in Pakistani service. We are not going to know anytime soon.